What's up guys, I'm Dunmere, I'm a rank 1 peak Supervive player, and I have almost 1,000 hours played in the game so far. So with that, I'm going to give you guys an Elluna guide, so hopefully you guys can get something good out of this. Let's discuss Elluna's strengths and weaknesses, starting with the strengths. Elluna's first core strength is her amazing sustain capability. Everything about her sustain is simply amazing. In terms of healing, her AoE healing circle is incredibly powerful. Not only is it capable of healing her whole team and herself at the same time, but it can be casted away to a distant ally too, and the numbers on it are more than sufficient. Similarly, her ultimate is also excellent. Not only does it offer the fundamentally insane capability of team reviving, but the healing it offers is incredibly impactful also. Her backpack passive just adds to how amazing her sustain really is, by offering a nearly risk-free method to revive downed allies, while also being able to reposition those allies in a location they'll be safe after getting rezzed. For reference, compare this to a team without Elluna, that would likely not even be able to get a third as many rezzes off mid-fight, and definitely wouldn't be able to reposition them in a safe location after. The best part for Elluna is that she can do all of this without having to trade anything for it. Her damage output stays the same throughout, and she doesn't even have to limit her healing to secure a res. She simply gets to do all at once. This compounds for even more value with her second core strength, her top tier mobility. Unlike many other members of the roster, Elluna has 2 dashes. This alone would be quite powerful, but these dashes are near the top of Supervive characters' mobility for how far she can travel with them, while still being on moderate base cooldown timers. In addition, she also has the ability to have her dash cooldowns by dashing through teammates. This may seem a bit situational, but it works even with ally wisps, so she can jump through an ally, get half CD, and pick them up to escape with her other dash, and have her first dash back within a few seconds to yeet herself wherever she needs to go after. So not only does this give her amazing fight utility, but gives her a top tier ability to escape from a fight and pull her allies with her when chasing kills from a one fight. Usually, a supportive character with this much sustain would severely lack in combat power to compensate, but this isn't the case with Elluna, as her third core strength is actually her respectable kill potential. Though she doesn't have quite the raw kill potential of some other characters in the roster, her damage is still quite high. On top of this, she does have a root in her kit, and a sufficient range on her attacks. Since she can use her damage and root all while taking advantage of both her mobility and sustain, Seraph still lands towards the top of the roster in terms of how often you can expect to secure kills with a character, much higher than you would expect. With the strengths covered, let's discuss Elluna's weaknesses. While she is a quite powerful and flexible character, she still does lack in some areas. Specifically, she lacks the ability to reliably hard stun an enemy. She can get a lot of value out of her root, but the root doesn't stop an enemy from using their abilities, and also takes some time to activate. So in the case that an enemy dives her, it isn't as good of a defensive option as it could be. Enemies can also play well around it by dashing right before the root goes off, which will often allow their momentum to continue and take them far enough from where Elluna and her team can reach them. In addition to this, Elluna's aggressive abilities are not the highest range out there. So while they are still useful in many situations, she will still sometimes struggle when caught out by a long-range character like Shrike. So with the strengths and weaknesses covered, let's talk about how to actually play Elluna. As a supportive character, Elluna gets the most value through sustaining her team. She'll thrive when playing in safer locations and focusing on healing her allies up because of this, while then swooping in for resurrections when an ally does get knocked. Though she does have strong offensive capabilities, she doesn't really want to get stuck in fights against enemies. She can supportively assist with root attempts from max range, but she'll risk throwing away a bunch of her value if an enemy can get on top of her or force her into a 1v1. She can't hard sustain her whole team through many situations though, so if she just stays alive, her team are unlikely to lose. So with that as an overview of strategy, let's get into specifics on her abilities. Elluna has 2 versions of her primary fire. She can either poke slowly at enemies at range and exclusively using the empowered version of her attack, or she can use the highest damage output version by max firing it. You generally want to default to range poking and only use the full spam when you're forced into close range or really trying to frag a specific target though. You get much more value from doing other things usually, so trying to force into closer range to spam damage is often just a waste of time and can even get you killed. Your priority when poking with the empowered attack though, really is to get mana rather than to deal damage, so it's okay to just shoot the easiest target to hit. As for Elluna's root, there are also 2 styles in which it can be used, one for offense and one for defense. She can use it offensively to fish for max range roots in a neutral fight. Landing one can create an opening for a pick or team engage, so this can be quite powerful. She can also save it for a defensive use when dove onto. Regardless, it's important to think of her root CC as being inconsistent though, as it isn't a hard CC. So if you hit one, it's usually best to not hard commit onto it unless it's going to hit multiple enemies. Otherwise, likely just use a defensive ability or be protected by their allies. So while it can result in a kill opportunity, you shouldn't hard commit unless you're confident you can get a kill while also staying safe. Now to Elluna's AoE heal circle, this ability is a powerful one with many ways it can be used. The most obvious of which is to just heal a large group of allies, but it can also be tossed onto a solo individual you need to keep up, or used to sustain yourself in a 1v1, or even save to a full sustain an ally after they get knocked. This ability is quite versatile though, as it doesn't have to be used for just one purpose since it can be thrown. So depending on the situation, you can partially use it for one of these purposes, and then throw it out for another. As for Elluna's dashes, they're obviously very useful just for repositioning, and even more so to swoop in and resurrect an ally. Yet they also offer a cooldown reduction on dash when dashing through an ally, and a cooldown reduction to Elluna's heal circle as well. This gives it an extra use case of being used to farm up extra heal circle uses. So if you aren't too threatened, you can pop a short dash through an ally or two to cut seconds off the heal. The dash's cooldown will be cut in half when you do this, so you won't be vulnerable for very long if you do it right. Regardless, because of the dash cooldown reduction, you should always be looking to dash through allies if possible when you do need to use a dash for another reason. As for Elluna's ultimate, it can be precast on an ally before they engage. It won't get full teleport and resurrect value though unless that ally is knocked before the ult goes off. So it's best to use it on an ally that is already knocked, or it can be used well on an ally that is about to be knocked. Either it sustains them enough for them to live, or they get knocked and resurrected for full value. It is important to note that Wisp can be stomped while this ultimate is going off though, so if an enemy is already standing on the target you want to ult, they'll likely just get stomped if you don't force them off before using it. Moving on to Elluna's backpack passive, it may seem simple, but there is a bit of tech you can use for extra benefit. Since Elluna regenerates her shield for each ally she picks up, you can delay picking up all Wisps at once if you are under pressure. Though this is a bit of an uncommon situation, like if you're low on your dashes, you can stagger the pickups to make maximum use of the shield you get each time, and then escape once your dash is then available. With the specifics covered, let's now talk about how to apply this into a full playstyle for Elluna. Though as I've mentioned, Elluna does have powerful damage dealing and CC capabilities, you should default to playing from the backline when playing her. She gets an insane amount of value when she just stays alive. This gives her opportunities to heal or resurrect allies, and punish enemies for overextending. Simply enough, Elluna's sustain is just so strong that her team will win against a no Elluna team if they don't get an extremely quick team wipe. So on Elluna, you live, you win. Yet this doesn't mean you just stand around and don't do anything. Instead, you need to watch for 3 different things that will require action from you. They aren't likely to always follow this exact order, but just make sure you haven't been wasting your dashes so you can actually follow up on whatever ends up popping up. The first action requiring condition is when an enemy strays too close to you or an enemy starts to play too aggressively on a side angle. This is the trigger to hunt for a root. Using it before one of these situations isn't likely to amount to much, as the delayed nature of the root means they need to be closer when it lands for you to get much value anyway. Once they do end up getting close enough to land a decent root though, you need to predict if the enemy won't be able to escape, or if they're going to bring the root into hitting at least another ally. In either of these situations, you can aggro to try and secure a kill, but if you're unlikely to get a lot out of the root, you need to not overextend and just go back to your default gameplay instead. The second action requiring condition is if allies lose enough HP to justify a heal circle use. If allies just take a bit of poke and can heal themselves up with a bonfire or food, don't use your heal circle, since you need your heal to restore HP when allies or yourself can't safely restore it. Instead, you're looking to pop a heal when the battle is more intense, and your allies can't afford to play slowly. Try to anticipate which of your allies is likely to most continue taking damage, as they're the ones that need to heal the most. Instead, you're looking to pop a heal when the battle is more intense, and your allies can't afford to play slowly. Try to anticipate which of your allies is likely to most continue taking damage, as they're the ones that need the heal the most. Though you can split 50-50 and heal one group before throwing it to someone else, this isn't always the best thing to do. There may be a situation like an ally having just won a 1v1 on a side angle, and then being mostly uncontested. Though they may be missing HP, they also might not need the healing burst that your frontline might. Regardless of who you choose to heal, just watch for the anti-healing wither effect, as this will make your healing do nothing anyway. Similarly, the heal isn't an instant heal, so if an ally is taking way too much damage, save your heal for something else. Instead, you should begin thinking about the third action requiring situation, which is an ally about to be knocked or having just been knocked. In this situation, you do technically have 2 methods in which to res the ally, but your default should be to look for a backpack res, since it has no cooldown and is the fastest. So if you have your dashes available as you should nearly always be able to grab your Wisp ally and escape, especially if your ally was killed by an enemy at range or around cover. However, this still doesn't mean you should just do it without thought, and instead you should ask yourself if it's too risky to physically commit your body onto the location that they died at. There will be times when it is too risky, then you likely just can't go for it. But if you can chunk the enemy enough with damage or a root to make them go away, or they are just taking too much damage to stomp the Wisp, you can just wait a bit, and then pick up your little Wisp buddy who will be crawling back to you. The easiest way to quickly determine whether you can go or not is how far your ally died into the enemy team. If they died close to you, then you can easily get them. Close to the enemy team, you basically don't have a chance. In between, and it's going to be based on how many resources they use to kill your ally, and how many you have remaining. If the situation is something like you having used both of your dashes while they use theirs to chase your ally, you can likely pull it off, especially if you look to bully them a bit first. If it's something like you've used your long dash and they haven't used much, then it's time to consider your next option, your ultimate. It is much more costly than a backpack res, but by using this sort of analysis, you'll have gotten down to knowing when it is absolutely necessary to go for it. Though the ultimate is quite powerful, allowing you to transport and res Wisp from full range, there are still things you need to consider when using it. First, can you stay in range of this target for its duration? Maybe you need to escape immediately so your ult would immediately cancel from its limitation. In that case, definitely don't use it. Second, are you likely to get stunned? In this situation, it's often best just to cut your losses, but it is still possible if you are confident you can dodge their stuns or if you have enough dashes. Alternatively, you can go for it if you bait them into using their stuns, making it look like you're going for a backpack res, and then save your full ultimate for right after. Again, this is risky, but it's still good learning to limit test sometimes. Third, is an enemy actively stomping the wisp? If so, you need to try and force them off. If you can't or would take too much damage to do so, then you just need to disengage. Remember, your number one priority as Elluna is staying alive. So even if you desperately want to get your lost member up, you'll often have a better chance to sustain a 3v4 into a victory. So while playing Elluna, keep your distance from enemies until they're incredibly vulnerable. Keep watching out for these 3 opportunities and just stay alive as long as possible. The key to much of Elluna is just understanding that you'll win over time as enemies run low on resources. So forcing something early on is likely to be tossing yourself at a brick wall. But wait the enemies out and they'll start to crack. Then you can throw your bunny self at them and destroy them.